The basic straight right, this is your main screen. There's two little panels right here. This is your main power to just your controls. Now this doesn't disconnect any of your power on any of your live circuits behind here. It just takes power away from the screens and the burners to turn every burner, like it won't fire pretty much, right? So right here is going to tell you rotation of each unit. So pretty much looks like one giant boiler is actually two individual tanks, two individual burners inside of here, and they talk to one another, right, for load demands. Each one's capable of 1.5 million BTUs a piece, which totals out to 3 million BTUs at full fire on both units, right? Which is why this is labeled a 3 million BTU boiler. But they use two separate units to achieve a higher turndown rate. So the right here is gonna be number one. Number two, this is gonna tell you the modulation rate on these blue lines, pretty much like low fire, mid fire, high fire. Right, if it's 1 bar is full, it's gonna be like on your lowest setting. If 3 bars is full, it's gonna be on your higher setting, which you see like 1.5 or 1,500. If there's nothing there and there's 0 BTU rating, it's gonna be in the off position. Right here, then this grayed line, it says 160. That's gonna be the set point off of this sensor. What it's looking for is a sensor right here. That's gonna be your common supply sensor. It's looking to achieve 160 degrees, which is what it's putting into y'all's system. Now, the 156 right above it in white is going to be the actual readout from this sensor. That sensor is what it currently is and what it's trying to achieve, which is why the blower is running at low fire right now. It doesn't want to overshoot, doesn't want to undershoot, just kind of wants to maintain, you know, a 5 or so over or below that temperature set point. The basic functions for what they're looking for as far as supply temperatures, hours, etc. The very basic to that is I'll start at the beginning. This is your home screen, or your, I guess, display for the operation. You hit this 3-bar red line button, go to information, general. Right here you'll see your outdoor temperature, which we have an external outdoor temperature outside up off that stack for the water heater. Kind of gives a readout of what the outside air is. There's also a curve built into this, so your set point will adjust depending on your outside air temperature. So it's colder, that set point will maybe go up to 165. If it's hotter, the set point may drop to 155, just because you don't need all that heat, right? Boiler temperature right there is the outlet at the back of the boiler on this line going to the pump set, so it's physically coming out. The burner starts, 18 burner starts total between both of them. Burner runtime 161 hours so far. So boiler temperatures is the internal temperature of each tank type vessel inside of here. So you got 184 on boiler 1, which is the front one, and 181 on boiler 2, which is on the back. Your common supply tip right here is the same readout you saw in the white lettering. That's what this sensor is reading out currently. So if you don't see it there or want to see it or see it somewhere else, that general information is the best way to look at it and get an actual real-time reading. The rest of this is not enabled, so that's why it all says off or NA. Obviously given the time, date, etc. June 3rd, 1:21 p.m. So if you see something or want to record date and time while you're in there, for when you pull those things, accurate for what the boiler reads, for monitoring, you know, faults, whatever. The time and date is at the very bottom of that general information list. So another thing too is you can go to lead boiler, and the lead boiler I believe is number 1 on this. You can either block it or vice versa. There's an issue, so you can pretty much isolate it from turning back on and off, to where if you just want to run one, you can.
Well, we can do that with the switches as well.
Yes, you can. You can reach behind there. Boiler sequence, you can switch which boiler you want to be lead lag, right? So 2 is actually the lead. So at the back is actually the one with the stars, which shows the lead boiler. So that's always going to, depending on its rotation cycle, it's built an algorithm for demand as far as if it rotates every 24 hours, every 48, every week, whatever the case may be. Then it'll tell number 1, hey, you're going to carry the load as the majority, and then I'll provide backup, and then it may switch vice versa. But that's all usually built into factory parameters. Also, time and date is also right there on the front. So if you see a lockout or something, you can, oh, I found it at this time, this place. Another thing too, settings, you can adjust date and time. Screen display, if you want to do brightness or screensaver, whatever the case, you can change it to where that's the brightness, and then what the screensaver reads, like outdoor air, room, whatever the case may be. Brightness control, same thing. Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. So this is the actual brightness overall of the screen. This one is when the screensaver, most when the screen's off or it has a screensaver in front, that's the brightness of that one. Another thing too, there's a red, and there's actually a red light right here. It's not illuminated because there's no issues, but this red light will turn on if there is a fault. So if you don't see anything, and the screen's not working or something, you can always slide this and look right there, see if it's giving you a fault reading or Again, this will turn off the screens and controls to each burner. It will not fire each one with either one with that off. Now, if you're to pull this, you actually have a secondary screen. This is for your lag blower. That's going to be the opposite, whatever that's set in there. Actually, it's going to be number 2 either way. So this will do the same thing this one does to an extent, but this only controls the boiler it's attached to, right? So this one you can adjust settings overall for both. This one particularly, unless it's hard settings, you have to come here to change them, which you guys should have to, so it should be a big deal. Individual power control for each control module for each boiler is right here. So if, like, for instance, this is boiler 1 up here, boiler 2 down here. So what you can do is, if, like, let's say you're having problems with boiler 1 and don't want it on at all, you can just flip that off and you'll still run off boiler number 2. Same thing vice versa. There's 2 sets of fuses in there as well. You guys should never have to use these, but if you ever do come across it, like I showed them, this is this little ladder versus this little, like, kind of hurricane looking thing. In this ladder position right here, what it does, it puts it in the test mode for emissions. So what will happen is you'll see this emissions test will pop up on that boiler in the Cascade. This will pop up on that screen. So if this one wants to do it, it'll do the same thing on that screen. Pretty much what this is, it'll ramp it up to 100% full fire. This is so you can check combustion, tuning, everything on commercial style boilers. This is how they recommend you do it. So if you ever do go into something, see something weird, like someone's in here, accidentally hits it or whatever, and it's running 100%, it will kick off. Once it reaches its auto reset high limit, it will turn it off, whether you're in emissions or not. Once it cools down, it'll restart and go back into the same parameter. To get out of it, if you do ever see it, just put it right back into the little hurricane looking thing, and it'll take it out of it, it'll unlock it, same thing up here, and it'll unlock it back, and you'll be able to see both. And again, main disconnect for the power. So this will take away any voltage coming into the boiler. So if you disconnect that, take this panel, you'll be dead on everything. There'll be no static voltage, but you will still be hot on the backside of that because you're not broken at your breaker or cutoff block. So just food for thought if you ever have to dig in there. You shouldn't. All your main controls are behind here. All your low voltage, high voltage connections are in here for all your add-ons, etc., for your sensors and whatnot. But if y'all ever have an issue with that, feel free to call us and whatnot, and we'll help you guys get to that point. Trying to go over anything else. I don't remember the password. There is a service password. I don't remember them. They actually may be in here, so before I leave, I'll look for them. So at least you guys see them. I think they have an operator level password. You can change certain settings on y'all's end or whatnot. There's some stuff here you guys aren't necessarily using, which is perfectly okay. This is the heating curve I was telling you about. So this right here, you can adjust the slope of the curve. So outdoor air temperature, supply temperature, right? So this sensor in correlation with your outdoor sensor. So right now it's set that at 68 degrees outside or above, it's gonna hold 160 degrees. That's gonna be a set point. When it falls down to 50 degrees outside, it's gonna reason that set point up to 163, give you a little bit extra heat. Same thing, falls down to 32 degrees, 166 will be your set point. So you'll see it change in the winter months when it gets really cold. You may see that set point change. It's not a big deal. It's just calculating and adding a little bit of heat. So if you guys need it, you got it. If you don't, you don't. Now, if you guys ever need help, this I believe walks you through it on here. This right here, I'm gonna leave this with you guys. This gives you all the controls, step-by-step instructions how to use them, and then how to navigate the screens as well. You can change that curve. For instance, like if you want, like if you take a slope, right? If I change the slope here, it's gonna pretty much bring my whole, it's gonna take this one lead up, but it's gonna kind of be a linear function. The shift is gonna be your linear function. This is gonna actually physically change your kind of drive up. It's gonna give you more. So like as you've seen it, right? We're at 0.2. We're never gonna, let's just say 14 is probably the coolest we'll ever get here, right? So 14 degrees, you're at 170 degrees. Now, if I was to adjust the slope on this, it's gonna bring this up. Now, I didn't adjust that one much, but I went up a good chunk right here. I went up 7 degrees, but I only went up 2 at the bottom. So your shift is gonna kind of pull you up and trying to create more of a curve, right? If you ever want it, you're like, man, I don't need 160, or I don't need, or whatever. If these percentage marks, you wanna bring it down a little bit. Just like, I want my anything above 68 degrees to be 150. So now that linear movement, right? 151 is going to change my 14 degrees to 161 versus 170. Now, if you wanted that to stay around that range, you could adjust that down a little bit, bring your slope up, so you get a higher range at that temperature, but still at 68 or above, you can still stay a little down. So again, shift is more linear, and slope is more of the fancy. I was never good at math, but you know how graphs work. I'm not going to changing those settings, so make sure it saves. So still same shit. As long as you don't hit that check mark, if you make any place, it will not change it. So just hit the back arrow, home arrow, then if you go back, it'll be the same as what you left it at. So you can put it in the boiler and standby if you really want to, or heating. There's options. A lot of that won't change. And I did promise you guys last time I was in here, I can't remember, besides physically changing the slope on the set point itself. So I will find that for you guys real quick.
Now, are there intake filters we have to change on this?
There are. They're actually right here on each sled. So right on the back side of this is kind of where your maturity for your gas and fan sits. So it kind of sits right up against this little oval piece right there. It sucks right into your fan. So if these do get dirty, yes, I highly recommend replacing them. Now, most filters, on what I tell everybody is, you can go to Home Depot, you can get your little, 12 by 12 by 1 filters. Obviously not the super,
so they're not HEPA filters.
Yeah, not like super restrictive filters, because if you take restrictions
they're
from
just
that,
poly filters.
Yeah, exactly. But with these ones, I have never ordered these ones, so I don't know if these are specific, because I think these kind of just sit in there. So I'd have to pull one, or if you guys want to pull one and see if you can get one that's similar, or vice versa. You guys let us know, hey, we want this many filters. We can call the rep. We can get maybe a stack of filters for you guys to keep on site.
Yeah, we have a filter company.
Okay. So anything that's equal or equivalent to that, I'm okay with, but I don't think those are box line. I think they're just loose. But there is two. They're very easy to change. You can just pop up this, pop it up, and slide it off. There's 2 screws that hold this panel onto itself. Unscrew them. Filter piece falls out. Flat filter goes in. Holder goes in. Screw it back in. Up and down. Very simple. We'll show you guys since I'm going over it. Not a bad idea. Keep doing it. So, we won't go super in depth, but it is a good troubleshooting set if you guys ever have to reach out. So each one of these, this is your gas valves on both, obviously. High pressure, low pressure gas switches. They're set. If there's too much gas going through the valve, it'll shut down as a safety. If it's too low on the inlet side, it'll shut it down as well. I believe there are internal resets to the screen, so instead of having a physical switch, they're wired back on the screen, so you reset them from the screen. The other thing in here, I don't know if y'all can see it very well, it would be easier on this side. Since they're right here, kind of see it. There's a controller right here. You can see right now it says 7. 7 is the run position. It'll go from P to 3, 5, 6, and 7. So P is pre-purge, so that's when it'll ramp all the way up to 100% while the air before it ignites. 4 is trial formation, 5 is ignition, and 6 is verifying, and 7 is run. So if you guys ever see any numbers other than that, or there may be a 1 in between or whatever, but
what about
if,
home spurt?
I think it goes back into P again, and it just goes to 0. Yeah, 5 right there, so it's ignition. 6 is verifying, and then 7 is running once it's verified. It takes a couple seconds, but it'll go to it. Not that y'all needed this, but you can manually modulate individually from each one of these with a code and a way to do it, but I won't go all the way into that. But if you ever do have issues, you're having things, if you ever pull these panels and look, there's a code flashing, or another number with zeros at over there flashing, just take a picture of it. It's a great troubleshooting step for us, and you can look at the fire coming out and be like, oh, this is what's going on. But that's why I want to let y'all know, be aware of it. That is a good troubleshooting step if you're having because that is in charge of the burner control itself. It gives feedback obviously to this, but sometimes there has been miscommunications where this is happening, but I don't see it there. So it's a good way to just pull these panels if it's ever flashing a code. It has the manual reset. There's an R button right there. If it is flashing a code and just you want to see if it happens again, if maybe it's an intermittent issue, you can open that up, hold that reset button for 5 seconds, let go, it'll reset itself and should run and recycle. I'm trying to give you all this information too, because everyone, sometimes you run into an odd issue. It's not really an issue, it just happens one time and you're stuck, you're like, oh my gosh. So I try and educate people enough to where they can be like, oh, okay, hey, look, well, let me see, before I call someone, let me just see if it's a reoccurring issue.
So if we have a blip in power, like we lose power for like a split second,
that can sometimes cause, depending on the type of panel it's wired into. So like,
because we have backup electricity, it's just sometimes
it takes
you'll
a second,
get that
Yeah, I completely. Or if you get that blip and it's just enough time for that generator to kick on, but then the regular power comes back on and it kicks. Yeah, I know. It can cause issues just depending on how the circuit's landed, right? So if it's not on a, what's the word? Those reset plugs, like you plug in, it has a reset.
Oh yeah, ground fault.
GFCI, yes. So a lot of people have gone to like GFCI breakers that way instead of surge. You can't surge through a GFCI breaker, right? That's mainly what it prevents.
Yeah.
Then you have breaker for obviously an overload. So a lot of these newer, I've always recommended this to people, especially during installs. I wasn't originally here for the install, so I wasn't sure, but a lot of these newer boilers coming out like this are like computers. So all your sensitive stuff, there's circuit boards inside that panel for days.
That's why I asked.
And exactly, and it's a great idea to ask. I've had people put external wire in, but I've literally had people do is wire in on the circuit, cut the plug, wire in an actual GFCI like giant transformer, like kind of little thing that has a bunch of plugs on it, and then wire a plug into the boiler power and plug it into that. So that piece just sits at the base of it and acts as a GFCI off of the main circuit if the main circuit isn't equipped with one. I would always recommend that to somebody if that's something you want to do for added protection. But again, you guys can do that on y'all's own end as well. It's not very complicated. But yes, you're right. And I've always recommended people either start using GFCI breakers because you can't have those blips and it can fry a lot of these boards like you would a computer. A lot of these things have built-in fuses and stuff, which do have almost every circuit board has a fuse or a breaker built into it. I believe there's 4 fuse breakers on here as well inside this panel.
Yeah, we need to order a bunch of those just so we have some
spares. Yeah,
spares.
Okay. Yeah, I can put a kind of recommended thing. Get with the
Please.
I can get with Goes as well and ask them, hey, what are some common issues you guys see, and what do y'all recommend having spare parts if you guys truly do want those spare parts? I can put a spreadsheet together and get it over to y'all.
Well, we're one of the furthest hospitals away from the main campus, so getting parts sometimes
pain in the butt. Yeah, I completely understand. So another thing, Tillman here, safety valve shut off for gas. You turn this. And we'll shut off the valve. Like if that, see, I just started it out, right? That's what shut off. I started the gas on it. But just to show you guys, if you ever run an issue, this thing's not closing or something, just reach in there and yank out, or turn main gas off. But if you're in here and that happens, individually you can isolate this from that, even if this is broken and lets gas through. So that way, worst case, you can isolate this one, turn it off, and still use that one.
So these blowers are frequency drive blowers.
They're actually PWM. So use
PWM.
pulse width modulation.
Really?
Yes. Or actually, I take that back. Since it does have a burn control,
So I thought
it may be a VFD. I'd have to look on these ones. It may be a VFD because it's using external burner control. So you may be right.
Okay.
I'll be honest. I'm not a subject matter expert on these. We've put a few of them in. And whatnot, I've put my hand on them a few times, but I don't know everything about it. Now, if you ask me about a large boiler, a whole different day, I can tell you anything and anything you want. But for the most part, they're pretty simple. A lot of people don't have a lot of crazy issues with them, and sometimes, like I said, think of it as a computer. You may end up with a trip code or something because there's just so much technology on these things, and it may not be a real issue. It may just be out of a tolerance a little bit, and it scares itself, and it'll shut down. The tolerances on these are a lot smaller with all these electrical add-ons. Which also makes them 10 times more efficient, which is the good part about it. But it's kind of one of those things. You get some, but you also lose some. Old mechanical, you usually had a lot of playing things, get away with some stuff. These new sensors, electronics, you start going to 1/100s, 1/50ths, etc. of parameter changes that they don't like to see. So they get a little bit quirky sometimes. But other than that, there's nothing crazy. We'll go back here. So another thing to see too is. I will explain this because this is, I think you've already had that occurrence on the other one. So the way these work, they're programmed at 50 parts per million if there was any gas leak or flue gas leak or something in here, CO buildup. This one is programmed to trip at 50 parts per million. All right. When it does that, an alarm will go off and it will shut down the boiler. And it won't tell you that it was a CO. I don't know if this one will feed back an actual CO saying, hey, CO alarm trip. I think it'll just say safety because it's wired into a safety circuit. An auxiliary safety circuit will just say safety 2 or something like that. So if you ever see that, always come back here and look and see if this is flashing or locked out. The best way to reset this is this is wired into the boiler power. Reset the main power on the boiler. So turn the boiler off, count to 10, turn the blower back on. That will reset this. As long as it's not still gas in the room. If it trips again at 50, parts per million are still at 50, it will trip again. The easiest way to reset it is physically just shut the power, because you don't have to physically take anything off, press the button.
Run it through 3 purrs.
Yeah, just let it do its thing. If it's still at 50 though, it will trip immediately on safety. So either get a fan in here at that point, you know that, and obviously if you have a physical hand tester and come here and there's no CO and that thing's still tripping, let us know. Maybe a calibration issue, maybe whatever case. If it's under warranty, then we'll replace it. Again, so this wire right here you see floating around, this one's going to go out and up over there and go to your outside air temperature sensor. There's another wire, black wire here, that's going to go over to that common supply sensor over there in that pipe that I showed y'all. Gas line, inlet, outlet, pressure relief valve, air bleeder right here. So a simple little tire air bleeder. If it ever stops bleeding or there's an issue, you got air, you should be able to take that little cap off, or it should be like a Schrader valve, like for an air tire, you can push and see if any air comes out. Safety shut off for gas valve isolation, inlet outlet gas isolation, main power supply coming in. Right here, we're gonna fix this. They installed it incorrectly. It's a P-trap. Obviously you can't put a P-trap sideways like that because it's supposed to be vertical to collect water. So we're gonna get that fixed. That pretty much all it does is prevent, P-trap, where it's prevent flue gas from coming out when there's not a lot of condensate. It just kind of holds a little bit of water in there. The condensate neutralization kit right here. Any water that fills up comes down, fills up this vessel right here with these, I always use marble chips or any type of rock that neutralizes some type of acid. They do wear down over time, so it is common that we come in and change out annually. I usually, in any condensing board, I usually change rocks or flush it. If it needs rocks, I add rocks. If they all need to be replaced, I replace them. And then once it fills up to a high enough level, it just drains down over there. Whole reason being, condensate coming back, whether it's from up there, draining back down out of the bottom of the boiler, running at lower temperatures, is very acidic. So if that stuff hits concrete over like 5 years, it'll start eating out your concrete. That's how acidic it is. So what they do by code and law, anything going any type of floor drain has to be close to a neutral pH level. So by going through that rock, it takes it from like a 4, 3.5 back to around the 5.5, 7, or sorry, 6.5, 7 neutral before it drains it out to a floor drain. Same thing with like you have flash tanks on boilers, because you can't take hotter than 180 degree to a floor drain or a city floor drain or anything like that. Drip plate for gas valve, and they added extension, I guess they put in case they want to add anything. I already brought it up. I don't know what we're going to do about it yet, but on this side right here, you see this cable coming up. Sorry, this isn't your main power.
Okay.
Your main power is the gray one coming in. This one actually goes to your low water cutoff. So this is equipped with a low water cutoff right here. It's back on this side. It measures it's your similar regular watchdog one that everyone has on their plate. Sorry. It will tell you if there's a low water cutoff safety. There is a reset in there. Obviously, how they place this pipe, I wasn't thrilled either. Now you can't access it in terms of safety to change or vice versa. So,
Turn the power on. 10 seconds.
yeah, I believe there's actually on top.
Turn the reset on.
Yes. So on this side, there's both. There's a reset and there's a test. So you hold the test button for 10 seconds, it'll automatically trip it, put a red light on there, should lock you out on the front W, and then you can just hit that reset button again. If you ever want to test it, that's fine. There's a test button and a reset button.
Okay.
Any manufacturer info, so that they put a number on there, but the actual serial number is on this item right here, the big data plate on this side. The model number and everything is over there on the lighter tag in the front right here. Again, drain valve for the PRV bus is built in to go down that floor drain. I tested that when I was here last time. And then on this side, you got 2 blow-down, individual blow-downs for each tank. You guys ever just want to put a hose on it or whatever. So
On the side.
yeah, on the side. But like I said, on most of these, I'm trying to get a better answer. But if you want to, maybe sit in you. But you got to drain the isolate the system, drain the whole tanks out, fill them. You know what I'm saying? Creates a big issue. If it's not an issue, you're not seeing poor water quality, or you're not seeing corrosion or certain stuff come out into the system or whatever, if you got examples, I would say just let us do with it. Whoever does your crew maintenance, whether it's us or someone else, let them do it on a yearly basis to do a shutdown. They're all stainless, they built into that, so it's really nothing. Yeah, it's complete hydronic or domestic hot water condensing board, so every part of that is stainless.
think they do it annually. I'm not sure.
Most likely. It's So, well, let me see if I can get that set.
Drive everything into the center and we can't get it out. Zero flow. Like,
Was it?
Yeah, that's it for now.